And so, because for the most part people don't really know what it is that they want, and they have all these wrong assumptions about themselves, not only do they get themselves in trouble, but they also get the person on the other side into a good amount of difficulty. That's the first thing about asking. And I think you should always go back to one of the Gospels that says, ask and you shall receive, knock and the door shall be opened unto you. But I think those statements in the New Testament are incomplete. I mean, how many of us in this class have gone out on like 50,000 dates? We keep going out on dates because there is something that we want in our companion. We just don't know what exactly it is. And when we assume that we have found it, time will reveal it was the wrong things that we're looking for. So you keep waiting and you keep knocking and you keep dating and you keep talking and spending money. Then you're 80. Then you say, you know what? I want a companion who has a car, who can drive me to Kaiser. For the first time after like 60 years, you know how to ask the right questions. But it takes a long time. Now, sometimes you ask for help. Now, help comes in a variety of different shapes and forms. In many cases, we only enjoy the sort of help that is abstract. We like people like Oprah Winfrey, we like Dr. Phil, because they're not really so much hands-on. How do I save my marriage? Well, read a book. Well, that's great. How do I overcome my addiction to alcohol? Well, fine, go to AA meetings, that's really good. So there is a sort of advice that goes with asking for help, recovery, so to speak, and you realize you like it because it's just so far away removed from you. And you try to kind of apply the advice to your own life, but because you don't really understand it and because no one's really pushing it down your throat to make it really applicable, after a couple of days or weeks you realize, well, you know, exercise compassion, be mindful, random act of kindness and those things that you find in bumper stickers as you're driving the highway, they're really good, but you can't do it consistently. Now, so that's one of the things you need to understand about whenever someone asks you for help. Are they looking for advice? Are they looking for advice that comes down and becomes applicable? No one really desires for something to come down and become applicable. Every person wants to do things from far away. How do I mend my relationship with my dad? Well, first you have like 20 years of history inside you filled with anger. That's the first thing. And then your father betrayed you, disappointed you, all that stuff. Then you have to look at him. And then every time you're around him, all these emotions come up. You have to make sure that you kind of just push the emotions down so they don't leak out to make a mess of things even more. And then you have to do this over and over again. Then one day after 20 years, you look at your dad and say, you know what? I understand now. You know, and the problem is whenever you make a mistake, in other words, whenever you want to apply a piece of advice and you realize you failed, you need someone next to you who can slap you really hard, either intellectually or emotionally or physically. So you can become aware that, you know, you ask for this because you want to mend your relationship. And it's tough and it's complex. Don't whine like a little baby. So it takes time for you to ask, first of all, then apply the advice that's given to you. You know, if you come to my office and you say, I want to write a really good essay, I say, okay, well, the essay is about Plato's allegory of the cave. Before you can even write an essay on that, well, why don't you read how it feels to have a teacher that you love, how it feels to have a teacher that you lose, how it just feels to love, to be invested. How does it feel for this teacher to be like 99% of who he or she is inside you? And then all of a sudden they're there no more. How does it feel for that? And he said, well, listen, I just want to do, you know, Plato's cave. I said, well, you can't do Plato's cave unless you understand all these prerequisites. The next problem is addiction. You're not going to become addicted. There are some drugs out there, like cocaine. You just need to look at it and you'll be addicted for the rest of your life. But most of the addictions that you and I have, they take place gradually. It's like a tiny little snowball that you have, and then you roll it down the hill, and 10 minutes later you realize it's giant of a ball. Okay, it's too heavy, you can't really do much about it, and it's frozen. So most of the addictions that happen to us gradually. So if I was to, for example, talk about alcohol, I would say the following. You and I are in a relationship. I thought I knew what relationships are all about. I come to realize I don't. Things are complicated, they're layered with complexities, and I don't have the tools to fix our relationship. So what I usually do is to kind of get rid of all the toxic, negative emotions that live inside me. I say, you know what, maybe I should drink. I remember my father drank a little, my brother drank a little, my friends drink a little, maybe I should do the same thing. So I go to the bar and I drink. it's nice. There are people there loud, the music is loud. I get kind of lost in the physical space of the bar. It's dark, everybody's like crazy and smelly. And I come out and I puke a little. It's my first time. I said, "Man, this was awful. While I was there, it was good, but now it's bad." But one of the nice things about puking afterwards is that you forget. You forget the pain of throwing up. And then I come home and you and I get into a wrestling match again. I realize things are not going too well. I can't read books. I don't listen to audios. I don't have very many friends who are insightful. They're kind of losers very much like me. So I take my sorry behind to another bar again. So I do this over and over and over again. It becomes part of my daily routine. I go to work, I come home. Once in a while we have a good time. Most often you and I have an awful time together. And some people go to church. Some people go to the boxing ring. I go to the bar. And what I come to realize is that what alcohol does for me is that it helps me forget. I don't think, I don't reflect. Is it true that sometimes when you drink, it can open certain portals or certain doors and emotions pour out and you scream and you cry? Sure, but for the most part, it helps me forget. And I like forgetting because when you are in the presence of something you don't like, it forces you to find a way out, to figure out what the hell you need to do with it. It's like the last day of this class, you've looked at your grades. First, you haven't been here very often. Second, your assignments suck. It's all zeros. And now you say, what the hell do I need to do? And so whenever you're confronted with things that you don't really want to see, and whenever you see, you begin to feel, and you don't want to see or feel, you say, you know what? It's not just my problem. It's not just my relationship that's problematic. It's my job that's problematic. It's my parents that's problematic. It's me that's problematic. Everything about my life is problematic. And you realize that you just don't drink because your relationship with me is bad. You drink because every relationship you have with every aspect of life is bad, at least 90% of it. So you just drink. And that becomes eventually your daily routine. And when you continue doing this, it becomes a habit. By the time it gets to habit, it means that you have done something over and over and over and over again for like 5, 10, 15, 20 months or years. And now you have this tiny little seed. Something about you after 5, 10 years revolts and says, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to recover. Now, any revolution, it doesn't really matter what it is. A revolution means you see something, whether it's a political revolution, a social revolution, or a revolution against your own addiction. Something about you rises up and says, I don't like this regime. I don't like this social environment. I don't like this political environment where every day I go to the bar and I drink. I want to rise up and fight. And what happens is all of your emotions come together, all of your mental prowess comes together and says, you know what? Let's find a way to combat my addiction to alcohol or to drugs or to porn, whatever it may be. Now remember, some addictions are really, 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 really good. It's good to read Noam Chomsky. It's good to read Karl Marx. It's good to read ideas that have to do with social and political spheres of life because it makes you more aware. It's good to listen to Bernie Sanders. Those addictions kind of help you grow and mature intellectually. It's good to think about death, even though it's problematic. You may come to the conclusion that yes, time is short and you want to kind of inject in time a good amount of meaning. You just don't know what there is out there that contains meaning. And now you're not so much in quest of finding God, the truth, something that has meaning, that you can kind of look yourself at 10 at night and say, you know what, I spent my day relatively well. So whenever you rise up to fight an addiction, you need to understand you're like a tiny little piece of this puzzle. And addiction is this huge piece in the puzzle. Now for any revolt to be victorious, to win over this addiction, it needs support system. So it can grow bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, most often we're going to fail in our revolts against any addiction because addictions usually have a history and your desire to change is a tiny little seed. And for this seed for it to gain permanence, to become permanent, something that's part of your core personality now, you're going to rise up, you're going to say, today I'm not going to drink, today you will not drink. But something about your body, your physical body now. You know how sometimes psychologically you say no sugar, but your body says give me some sugar. And even though psychologically you may say to yourself, I no longer want to drink, your body now craves it. And if the addiction has been for a long time, your body will win over your intellect and your emotions, you will find yourself in the bar again. And so what will happen once you again fail, you very much like having gone to a church, you sit somewhere and you have a great amount of shame and regret and remorse, and you punish yourself. And remember, you don't need to be religious for any of this stuff to happen. Anytime you have a goal, and anytime you walk towards that goal only to realize you're failing, shame and guilt and repentance and remorse will come down, and you will be punished by your own conscience. You don't need anyone from the outside to do that. The very fact that you have a goal for yourself, and all of us in this class have done so, in the sense that, you go out with French, you go out with Germany, you go out with someone from Ireland, only you realize none of this stuff is working. And then you realize, well, it's because of the way you think about relationship, and the way you think about relationship is because of the way you think about yourself. And now you want to change all those narratives. Now you're kind of going into hibernation, you won't date anyone for a while, and then you say, you know what, I think I'm ready. I want to go out there and find someone. And you go out and you realize the old habits, the old feelings, the old way of thinking about relationships, all of a sudden, like an army, they come forth and they begin to guide you. And then you kind of spend 2, 3, 4, 5 hours or days or weeks or years with this person. All of a sudden something about you says, damn, you've made the same mistake again. And you got to do this over and over and over again until hopefully one day you'll just understand a few things and you won't repeat the same old mistakes. Now, to overcome anything, you need a support system. One of the best examples of a support system that is required if you want to make any transformation about yourself and your life is, you'll find it in Buddhism. You need a teacher at the very top whose name is the Buddha. And you don't need to think about India or Nepal or Jesus Christ. A teacher is anyone who has gone where you've been or where you are. In other words, you don't need a Jesus Christ to overcome your alcoholism. You need me, because I was an alcoholic for 40 years. I know what it means to lose things, not just your family, your organs. I know how it feels to lose time. I know how it feels to be depressed, to be angry. I'm your teacher. Now, with any person who has a good amount of insight and wisdom inside them, and remember, it doesn't really matter what craft you're talking about. If you're good at anything, you need students who are ready to learn from you. The only thing a teacher of any craft can give you is their own experience. It's filled with wisdom, remorse, repentance, a lot of mistakes. That's what they're giving you. So any teacher, any branch in life, what they possess is wisdom of their own craft. Now, what they do know is that giving you wisdom is good, but your ability to understand is really, really bad. They'll keep giving you, you'll keep failing yourself and failing them. You'll do a couple of things. You'll either walk away because you feel incompetent, or there is a support system. It's what we call friendship. Just in case I don't hear from you, I will call you. What's going on? I didn't see you at the meeting today. And you say, yeah, the lights have been turned off, the blinds have been shut. I haven't left the house for like 2 weeks. And then the friend comes knocking on your door. If you don't answer, they break your window, come through the window, grab you by the hair, and they'll pull you to the meeting. So what you have is the Buddha at the very top. Then you have the lessons. Then you have the wisdom. And then every teacher has his or her own unique community of students. We call it Sangha. That if you like philosophy, I'm going to tell you, don't hang out with Mackay. He's no good. Hang out with Richard. I know you don't know him. I know you don't like him. But if you like philosophy, you need to hang out with him. Why? Because he's been hanging out with me for the past 20 years. And he knows what this process is, and he knows what people go through. The only thing that Richard will do for you, he reminds you of me. You don't have respect for Richard, but you do have respect for me. So Richard becomes an extension of me. Now, oftentimes the mistake that takes place is Richard assumes that just because I told you to go to him, that he actually needs to tell you things. He doesn't need to tell you anything. He just needs to sit next to you. He needs to be your friend. That's all he needs to do. You have nothing to offer him. Your relationship with Richard is not the way your relationship with me is. The thing you need to do is sit, read a book together, cook together, eat together, drink together, and that's it. And every time Richard comes to realize you're not calling him and it's been like a couple days, he calls you. Now, Richard is not going to call you because he doesn't really care for you. I have to tell Richard to give you a call. So without a support system, you can't overcome any addiction. Now, here's the problem with overcoming anything that you think has impacted your life in a negative way. The practical application, the on-ground, taking online classes is easy. You can stay in your pajamas, you can wake up like 2 minutes before the class starts, and you can just do your work anytime you want it, perhaps. If there are no Zoom meetings, you can just be the scumbag that you are, just turn on your laptop, do a few things and go back to sleep. Face-to-face classes are tough. Tough first because you don't come to school with your jammies, have some self-respect. I mean, what the hell is wrong with you? People look at you. Inspire them, look good, wear goddamn makeup. Don't have people look at you and just feel shitty because you look shitty. You owe it to like your people to smell good, to look good. Inspire them in some shape or form. Because God knows life sucks the life out of us. If there are people out there who have some good looks, well, dress well, goddammit. You know, just say, yes, beauty does exist. I can be inspired by someone's good looks. And if you even can do that basic thing. So one of the problems with overcoming addiction in a very serious way is that if you look at your cell phone, you realize most of your contact list are people you drink with. Those who don't drink, they're your friends because you call them every day and you lament. They're like your church. You whine and you cry and you scream and they're willing to listen to you. Now, one of the things you need to understand about overcoming any addiction is it's not just you no longer going to the bar. You can't even hang out with the people who you used to hang out with. You can't even talk to the people you used to talk with. Why? Because all those people are an extension of alcohol. All those people are an extension of problems that you haven't solved. They kind of encourage you to go back to the addiction. So what we're talking about is very much like Jesus at the age of 12 saying, you know what? I hate my people, I hate their religion, I'm just gonna go off somewhere. I'm gonna figure out what all of this means on my own by myself. And that's overcoming any addiction. At the end of the day, if you wanna overcome anything, you have to leave your parents who have encouraged you, supported you perhaps in your drinking habits, or maybe they're just frustrated, they've just given up on you. You need to walk away from them, walk away from your cell phone, walk away from everything that's connected to your life. And you find yourself in the desert. There is nothing that can support you, nothing that can nourish you, except your teacher and his or her community. And what a teacher does, his task is to always make you feel bad, always. Your friends make you feel good. Every time you go to a teacher or someone who's there to help you overcoming an addiction, every time you open your mouth to talk about how shitty your life is, they kind of look at you and say, shut your mouth, I don't want to hear it. And then you realize you have to kind of keep your stuff inside you. No one cares for your stories because we've all been there. We've all done that. I'm not here as a therapist. I'm here to help you recover. And these are the pieces of advice I can give you. And if you want to look at these pieces of advice as something abstract, theories way out there, I'm not interested in you. It's hands-on, man. If you've had trust issues, the only thing I can do is I can invite you to the class, I can invite you to the office, I can invite you to my house every day for the next 10 years. Until you say, you know what, I like Amir, and I trust Amir, and you know what, I love Amir. I will do what I can. I will exploit your physical body, your intellectual body, your emotional body. And once I realize, you know what, you've overcome a good amount of your addictions to a life that goes nowhere. And at that time I say, you know what, go your way, man, I think you can do fine. And when you go out there, you can actually find yourself a nice companion, and you'll have the courage to actually fall in love. Trust people. Right now, you want to have faith and love and trust people. It's a great idea. You just can't do it because there is no foundation for it. It doesn't mean you won't fall in love. You will. You will fall in love 1,000 times. Will they last? No. So anything that's on ground, practical, it's going to be really, 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 really tough. You know, and I always go back to some of the wisdom that history has given us. The most simple, the most superficial is the one you'll find in the 4 Gospels. You can't find anyone wiser than Jesus Christ. He's like the embodiment of everything that God is. All he wanted for his disciples is see, understand, and apply. And all they could do was to see and to feel. No understanding, but no application. And that's the difficulty of applying anything, because you have to combat everything about you that's human and everything about you that has historical stories or narratives. It's really, really tough. So when you read, for example, the life of Socrates, you realize, well, you know, he was very lucky to be able to find one student, Plato. And when you go down the line, you realize they get worse and worse and worse as time goes on. Socrates fell in love with Diotima, and he was willing to sacrifice his life for philosophy. Plato says, you know what, I don't like to hang out with people, I'll just hang out with books. He writes. Aristotle, he says, you know what, I don't want to die the way Socrates died. I'm going to run away. And what you'll encounter in history is that as you get these watered down versions of philosophy, by the time it gets to our age, you realize they're just some crummy people like me, sit in the office, they look at the wall, they're inspired with an idea, they write it down, and it becomes a book. Does my philosophy of life have any practical application? No. Do I even understand it? Probably not. It's always difficult to go against history because that's what lives inside you. Addiction is history. And you're not just talking about alcohol, you're talking about your relationship with your parents, all the ways that life has betrayed you, disappointed you. So you don't really have to just learn about, what alcohol does to your system. You have to learn about what life does to you and the amount of frustration it just injects inside you. And that's a tough place to be, man. You say, I just came here to recover from alcohol. It says, no. It's not just about alcohol. Your emotions, your parents, your friendships, temperament, understanding life. So remember, ask. It takes many years to be able to ask the right questions and to understand why you're asking those questions. Second, you have to make sure that you ask those questions from the right person because there are lots of charlatans out there. There are lots of people who want to feel good about themselves. I like to feel good about myself, so I'll create all these traps for you so you can come to my office, so you can come to my home. In that way, I can feel good about myself. So there are lots of people like me whom you need to avoid. Then the second thing you need to understand is anyone who gives you a piece of advice, a really, really proficient teacher who gives you a piece of advice, don't ever assume you're going to understand what he or she is giving you. What you will have is a good amount of feelings. They'll generate like volcanoes of feelings erupting all about you. And you won't be able to understand why you feel the way you feel. Just go with it though. Stay with that person for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. If you're lucky, you will understand. Then what happens is you will try to apply the understanding on ground. And you realize 90% of the things you understand are just wrong, 10% of good. And that 10%, they're your messiahs. They'll carry you out.